and welcome to Oweleketv Business Time. I am Chiwendu Osisiago. Today we'll be discussing on security, poverty reduction, job priorities as Senate receives 2024 budgets. President Bola Tinubu has presented a budget of 27.5 trillion naira for the 2024 fiscal year to the National Assembly. He made the presentation to the joint section of the National Assembly held at the temporary chamber of the House of Representatives. The budget is christened Budget for the Renewed Hope. Recently, the two chambers of the National Assembly passed the 2024 to 2026 medium-term expenditure framework and the fiscal strategy paper FSP with a total spending of 26 trillion naira for the 2024 budget fiscal year and a borrowing plan of 7.8 trillion naira. While presenting details of the budget, Tinubu said the 2024 appropriation was designed to address economic growth, human capital development, poverty reduction, and insecurity. The president also said the 2024 budget will address issues in the education sector, such as establishment of a sustainable model of funded tertiary education and implementation of the student loan scheme scheduled to become operational by January 2024. He explained that based on the parameters and fiscal assumptions, the recurrent expenditure will go up 9.92 trillion naira. Capital expenditure is 8.7 trillion naira. Deficit projected at 9.18 trillion naira. And debt servicing will go up to 8.25 trillion naira. This and many more is what we'll be discussing today. We have a guest in the studio. You get to meet him shortly after the break. Welcome back. Like I said, we have a guest in the studio to discuss on that topic. It is Mr. Edward Okoje. Mr. Edward Okoje is a multi-faceted professional in farming. He's an economist. He's also a fitness coach and a financial market analyst. Mr. Edward Okoje, you're welcome to Oweleketv Business Time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
It's good to have you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, sir, let's go straight to the discussion for today. We are discussing on security, poverty reduction, job priorities as Senate received the 2024 budget. Recently, we are all aware that the president recently presented the budget to the National Assembly. What's your overall view about this?
Oh, well, thank you for having me. You see, when I saw the 2024 budget, I immediately started to reflect back at the previous budget we've always had before. You know, they look fantastic. You look at the appropriation for, every subsectors of the economy. You look at agriculture. You look at military. You look at ICT. In fact, every sector of the economy, you look at it and you say, okay, I mean, if we're able to spend this amount of money on these sectors, you should expect results. So I think it will be safe to say that we've never had a bad budget, so to speak. We've never had a bad budget. It's always been very well, put down. But the problem is, as it has always been, is the implementation. Well, it's left for us to see if this year will be different, if how much they are going to implement the 2024 budget is left for us to see that. But for now, I think the budget is okay. I mean, a lot of people are saying that, oh, the amount looks very high at 27 trillion. But if you look at it, we also have problem of inflation. So the value of 27 trillion today, if you adjust for inflation, it will give you almost the same amount for 2023 budget. So it's practically the same thing. So
as an economist, sir, do you feel it's a good foundation?
Yes, it is. I mean, you know that the government cannot spend any money without budgeting for it, So budget is something that government has to do. And of course, it's a framework. It's something that guides them. If you don't have a budget, you end up spending, just anyhow. But by the time we get deeper into the budget, you would see one or two lapses that, I found there, basically. And this is a recurring situation where, we keep having the same thing on the budget every year. And you just wonder, why don't we take out some of these things and channel them into sectors that are, in dire need for them? For example, if you look at the budget, almost all the ministries, departments, and agencies, they have furniture maintenance, furniture purchase, computers, softwares. Same thing you find in 2023 budget, same thing you find in 20. So you keep wondering, why do we keep buying furniture every year? Why do we keep buying softwares and computers every year? If you put these monies together, I mean, none of them had less than 20 billion, appropriated for it. If we put these monies together, we can channel them into better sectors that can give us results instead of, all these things, vehicles, maintenance, stuff like that, at this point in time, as we are in Nigeria, at this point in time where, we have problem of inflation, we have problem of unemployment and all of that, we import virtually everything we consume in this country. You would think that, things like this should not appear in 2024 budget. And to speak further, we have a new government. One would have thought that, things should be different. We should have, a new way of budgeting and appropriating our monies, but it's just the same.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir. So, to a layman's understanding now, how can you explain what exactly budgeting? People hear budgets. Most people honestly don't really understand. And what exactly is it used for?
Yeah, so a lot of people think that budget is money. So when they say budget, I mean, you hear people say they budgeted so amount of money last year. We didn't see the money. Budget is not money. Budget is a paperwork that shows how monies will be will come in, and how those money that come in will also be expended. So it doesn't mean that the money has come in yet, and it doesn't also mean that the money has been expended yet. So it just says that, okay, if we're able to make so amount of money from different sources of incomes, crude oil sales, taxes, and all the components you will find in the income part of the budget, if we're able to make this amount of money, and then the borrowing as well, this is how we are going to spend it. It's just a paperwork that shows how you hope to get the income in, and when the income comes in, how you hope to spend it. So that's why you now have things like implementation percentage. You talk about level of implementation, because it is not every money that you expected to come in that will come in, and it's not every money that you expected to spend that you will spend. So a lot of people look at it and say, oh, they budgeted, for example, they budgeted 200 billion for education. We didn't see it. The truth is that, well, if the government did not make as much money as they expected to make, they are going to cut down on different expenditures. So at the end of the day, implementation will be, let's say, 40-50%. I think at this time, we'll have to give this government the benefit of the doubt, because they are still new. This is their first budget. This is President Tinubu's first budget. We would have to wait to see how much implementation he can give to this budget, because we cannot just, if you look at the past record of the other governments, whether political party or whatever, we know that federal government is the same. We can say Nigeria's federal government, but this is a new government. And so we cannot judge this government based on the performances of the other governments. So it's left for us to wait and see how much implementation this present administration can do to this 2024 appropriation. Then maybe by 2025, we can start to judge them and say, oh, this is what they did the last time. So we don't know. But like I said, if you look at the appropriation, it looks good. It looks good for the most part. It looks good.
All right, thank you very much. Before we go on the street of Abuja to get the views of Nigeria, sir, how can you compare the past one that President Buhari did? Is it comparable, the budget he presented last in his own tenure?
If you look at the budget, like I said, all the components are the same. There's nothing new inside budgets. Let's say the last 2023 budget and 2025 budget, there's nothing new inside. There's literally nothing new. It's the same thing, right? But like I said, what would differentiate between Tinubu's administration and Buhari's administration would be implementation level. Buhari's administration did not get over 40% implementation level in all of his 8 years.
It wasn't utilized.
It was not utilized. So, and there's one thing that is very pertinent about budgets. You will find out that the recurrent expenditures are always implemented, because those are the ones that they get to spend on salaries. So of course they have to pay salaries and all of that. But when it comes to capital expenditure, the ones that you use to build infrastructures and all of that, those are the ones that suffer the most. So for me personally, I would even want to focus more on the capital expenditure. I want to know how much you implement the capital appropriation, how much you implemented that. If by the end of, let's say by December 2024, we are able to look back at the entire fiscal year of 2024, I think we'll be able to judge based on that. But like I said, budgets they are just the same. There's nothing different. Like I said, the value may be more, but if you adjust for inflation, it comes down to the same thing.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Edward Okoje. Now let's go to the streets of Abuja to get the views of Nigerians about the budget.
I have my doubt as to whether it will have any impact on the economy. And the reason is that from the figure, you will see that there has been a lot of devaluation of the naira. And because of that, the figure itself, the experts have said that it's not as if because the figure is high, therefore it's going to have any impact on the economy. The figure is high because there is devaluation. And people have said that the devaluation has only brought the naira down. And for that reason, it's not going to have much impact on the economy. That is my view.
If the money budgeted will not be used for expenses, National Assembly and buying cars and all those things, if they really put it into the system, it can work. But now, if the corruption continues, it will just be like business as usual.
The budget, if you look at the previous budget, is an improvement, but the issue we've always had over the years is implementation of budget. If you remember before, the budget cycle was moved from one period to period, but from 2 years ago, that has now been moved from January to December. But even the 2023 budget, has it been fully implemented? With that implementation, you cannot see the effect on the citizenry. Because for the citizen to enjoy the budget, it must be fully implemented. Now, but the reverse is the case. In Nigeria, corruption is order of the day. We don't even see the budget. For instance, if you budgeted 20 million for something, are we sure that the money was expended on that particular thing that the budget was meant for?
They are making things so difficult to ordinary Nigerians. Why? That's the first question. For me, everybody have to stand up and start struggling. Don't wait for a government. We don't have a government now in Nigeria. We don't have government. And they say we have government. Where is the government? Judiciary are collecting money. If judiciary can collect money, who is government again? We didn't have government. So you are on your own. If you like, live. If you like, die. You are on your own.
To me, I feel like it will boost the economy because I believe the budget is the highest so far. The highest budget I've ever seen. So I believe it will have a positive impact in the economy.
My own best of understanding, the budget will definitely impact based on at least the into different sectors like agricultural sectors, educational sectors, health sectors, and and some other things. So in that area, government may try to venture money into all these sectors and just figure it out, and it will create more employment and employment opportunity for its citizens.
All right, welcome back. Mr. Edward, you heard the views of Nigerians on how the budget is, or probably the way they feel about the budget. What can you say about that?
Well, you asked me a question from the beginning that, we should explain what budget is. The truth is that if you listen to the Nigerians you interviewed on the streets, you would realize that they don't have the basic knowledge of what a budget is, because you could hear that man saying that he don't know what the monies are spent on and all of that. So, like I said, Nigerians need to understand that a budget is not money. It's not like we have it's not like 27 trillion is sitting down somewhere in CBN that is waiting to be expended. Now, if it's a company, let's say you run a company, you run a limited liability company, and you have funds in your company accounts, and you have budgeted on how to spend these funds, it's different from government expenditure. Government expenditure is based on income level. If they are not able to pursue the income part, they will not be able to implement the expenditure part. So they need to understand that, because if you look at some of the comments, you just understand that people don't really understand what budget is. People say they don't know where the money was spent on. And somebody said that the budget, somebody made mention of those same items that I mentioned. It's like that person have seen the details of the budget, and you could hear the person complain about vehicles and all of those items which I just mentioned. I think going forward, we need to look at those items, because we cannot keep buying vehicles every year, buying computers, softwares. Those are just waste. We need to channel those monies into something more important. So that's just the views of Nigerians. So I don't think they are wrong, but they need to understand what budget is.
All right, thank you very much, sir. So in Tinubu's presentation, sir, he said that it will address economic growth and human capital development, poverty reduction, and insecurity. How possible is this?
Okay, now let's start from the security part. If you look back at previous budgets, most governments, most administrations, they don't like to touch anything that has to do with military, because it's a very important facet of the country. Because I mean, without safety, there's nothing anyone can do. And if you look at the budget, you see that military spending takes chunks of the appropriation. So it's very, very important. It's an important part of the budget. So whatever amount of money that is being budgeted for security and all of that, I don't like to criticize it, because it's very, very important. You have to take care of our soldiers. You have to take care of them in the battlefield. You have to provide the ammunition for them to carry out all the various wars and everything that's going on, especially the internal security crisis, the bandits. There's a lot of challenges facing the military. So given that, if you look at the other parts of the budget, when the president said that the budget will address the economic challenges, I don't agree with him on that, because one of the challenges we're having right now in Nigeria is not really a problem of how will I say it now? It's not velocity of money. When I say velocity of money, what I mean is the amount of money in circulation is not the problem in Nigeria right now. The problem in Nigeria is inflation, which is a persistent rising in the prices of commodities in the market. If you go to the market today, any commodity that is sold for a certain amount, if you go back the next day, the prices have increased. This is a problem. And inflation, I mean, expenditure does not solve inflationary problems. It doesn't. In fact, if for anything, it makes it worse. Now, what is the cause? If you want to look at what is causing inflation, you have to look at, before you solve the problem of inflation, you have to look at the root cause of it. There are two types of inflation. There is demand pull and there's cost push. So demand pull is when the people in the economy, or let's say the country now, when they are suddenly demanding too much for goods and services, they are spending. There's a lot of money to spend, and then the goods to satisfy that demand is not available. It causes inflation. So people begin to increase their price of commodities. And then there's cost push, when the cost of production increases tremendously. If you look at Nigeria's inflation problem, it's cost push. It started from 2020 when we had lockdown, there was no productivity and all of that. Since then, prices of things have been shooting up. So this is the major problems that we are facing in Nigeria today. Budget does not solve it. It doesn't. So I don't expect him to say that the budget will solve Nigeria's economic problems, because it's not budget that will solve that. If we had problem of recession, for example, where you know that there's weaker demand and there's weaker spending, then you can talk about budget, because what you need to do is to reflate businesses and companies, get them into production, which will now increase employment to solve demand problem, right? Yes. But in this case, budget does not solve this problem. What can solve this problem is not even monetary policy, is fiscal policy. So this budget will not solve the economic problem that we have in Nigeria right now. If for anything, the moment the budget kicks off and the implementation starts, inflation is likely to increase.
Wow.
Yes, that's what it is. Because once there is increase in government spending, it will increase the amount of the money in circulation, which is the velocity of money in circulation, and it will create more problems. It will create more recessive problem.
All right, thank you very much, sir. So, sir, with the breakdown of the budget, sir, do you see better 2024?
Well, one thing we can do in this country is to hope for the best. I don't want to be pessimistic about it. But I would say that given the current challenges that we have right now, the budget, like I said, I don't think this budget will solve our problems. I'll just give you a very typical example. We are exporting crude oil. In fact, crude oil makes up about 82% of our total export as a country. And you can see that that is being challenged right now in the international community. For example, there's a conference going on right now about COP28, about environment. And what they are doing right now is that they are moving away from fossil fuels. They are moving away from crude oil. You know, countries, a lot of countries in Europe, they are now making it compulsory that, how will I say it now? This rechargeable battery cars are being used rather than the normal fuel cars that we know. So once this comes into effect, in fact, by 2050, no country will be producing fuel-driven vehicles anymore. So once this comes into effect, what do we do as a country? Who do we sell crude oil to? Who do we sell to? Because it's going to collapse. So if crude oil is making 82% of our total export right now, in 2050, what are we going to be exporting? This is a question that we've not really asked. So I expect Nigerian budget to be targeted towards other facets of the economy that doesn't have to do with oil, like agriculture, ICT. You know, there's something that the Minister of Information Technology is doing right now. It's called 3MTT. I think it's a very, very wonderful idea. You know, they are training about 3 million Nigerians on ICT, on different types of ICT. I believe that these are the things that we should be looking onto. And more budgets should be directed towards this kind of projects more than what we see inside the budget, talking about purchase of furniture, purchase of cars, purchase of all of that. So the budget, to speak, will not solve our economic problem. I am very, very sure of that. Because the problem we have is not problem of expenditure. It's not problem of velocity of money. What we have, our problem right now in Nigeria is inflation. And because we are not exporting, if you look at the value of Naira and dollar, which is very, very important, the exchange rate of not just dollar, any foreign currency, the more Naira falls against different currencies, the more our economy will suffer. That is the truth. So if we are not exporting, how do we balance, how do we increase the value of the Naira if we are not exporting? And this budget was supposed to be channeled to, you know, production, to agriculture, things that we can produce and export to earn foreign currency. So relying on oil, crude oil, you know, for the past 60 years or thereabout, we've been relying on crude oil. And from what I can see, we're still doing the same thing all over again. We're doing the same thing and expecting a different result. I don't want to be pessimistic, but I don't think so.
All right, so let's deviate a bit, because you keep talking about inflation. What exactly can the government do on this particular inflation? Because things are actually increasing in the market.
Yes.
So as an economist, what do you think the government can actually do regarding this inflation?
You see, one of the, we cannot blame this government for all the problems that we are facing in this country. That's just the truth. We cannot blame this government because they just came in. They are barely 7 months old. Okay. So, I mean, I'm not just going to sit here and say, oh, this government is not doing enough. All right. Because some of these problems are problems that have been brewing for a long time. If you remember, some time ago, around 2012, 2013, the former Minister of Finance was warning that a time like this will come, that we need to save. But the governors, they were fighting and all of that. They said, no, let's spend the money and all of that. They even took her to court. So the thing is, there's no short-term solution to these challenges. That's just the truth. There's no short-term solution. Inflation is deadly. It's very difficult to contain. Any country that have gone through inflation, if you look at Zimbabwe, for many years, Zimbabwe was, in fact, at some point, the inflation rate in Zimbabwe got to 8 million %. We are talking of 27% in Nigeria, where we are feeling like it's already too much for us to bear. If Zimbabwe at some point, it was 8 million %. In fact, to buy bread, you have to carry your cash in wheelbarrow to go and buy bread. It was that bad. In fact, they stopped accepting their own currency. They started using the US dollar. I think that it's not something that we can solve that easily. It's not going to be easy. But one thing the government can do, because inflationary problem is not even the federal government a job to solve, is CBN, the central bank, because you cannot use, like I said, you cannot use fiscal policy to solve inflation. You use monetary policy to solve inflation. And monetary policies comes from CBN. They've been trying. They keep, I mean, for the past 6 months or thereabout, they've been increasing the interest rates just to reduce the velocity of money in circulation. But it has not yielded any effort, because for the past 6 months, inflation has continued to increase every month for the past 6 months. It has not yielded any result. So what do they need to do? First thing, we need to find a way to stop importation of petroleum products. Very, very important. In fact, if I was the president, I would dedicate substantial part of this budget to solving that issue. If I was the president, I don't care how much it will cost me. I would repair all the refineries in Nigeria, because what will it cost to repair refineries? If you look at how much we are spending to import petroleum products, how can we export 82% of crude oil and then import 33% of it back into the country? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. First thing we need to solve is to stop importation of petroleum products. I don't know how they are going to do that. We have about 3 government-owned refineries in Nigeria. There's Dangote refinery that is supposed to come up. There are other modular refineries that are supposed to come up. The government should give assistance to these people. I don't know how they are going to get the monies, but they need to pump money into refineries and fix them up at least before the first 6 months of 2024. If they do that, imagine if we don't have to spend how much do they spend? About $150-something million every month to import petroleum products. Imagine if we don't have to spend all that money importing petroleum products. Imagine if that money stays with us. It would help the Naira to gain more value. By the time we do that, you'll see that the price of commodities will start to drop. It will not drop tremendously, but even if you are gaining 0.5% per month, I mean, the reduction, let's say from 27%, you get 26.5, you get 26%, and then you start to drop consistently like that, the economy can be better. But if we don't do that, if we don't stop the importation of petroleum products, I don't see this problem going away anytime soon.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Edward Okoji. Now your final take, sir.
All right. So finally, I mean, if government officials can hear me right now, I think we need to have a system in appropriating our budget where we remove, I'm very, very particular about that, where we remove unnecessary items from the budget. I mean, I was looking at the budget details yesterday, and I was seeing items like, you will see vehicle purchase. You will now come under and see SUV purchase. What is the difference between SUV and vehicle? It's the same thing. Then you see furniture maintenance. You see furniture purchase. So how do you maintain old furniture and still buy new furniture? And these items are not, the figures are not small. I believe that we need to cut all of this spending. If they don't do that, if we keep doing the same thing every year, if you bring down all the ministries, departments, and agencies, and I can tell you that all of them have the same thing on that budget. So it's not like it's few of them. If you go to EFCC, the ICPC, all the ministry, department, and agencies, they have the same thing on their budget. Furniture purchase, furniture maintenance, car purchase, car maintenance. Those items, we know that these are not necessary. So what happened to the cars that were bought here last year? What happened to the ones that were bought in 2021, 2022, 2020? So are we saying that every year MDAs have to change their vehicles, have to change their furnitures? Are we that rich? We're not Saudi Arabia. Why are we doing that? Why are we spending money on unnecessary things? They need to look into items like that. If they remove all those items, in fact, if we remove all these items, I can tell you that the budget can even drop by 20%. Believe me, if we remove all these items, budget can drop by 20%. Then we can channel these items. That's that 20% that is being deducted from removal of these unnecessary components of this budget. We can then channel them into very more important. If we channel, for example, 2 trillion naira into Port Harcourt refinery, it will come up. It will come up in 3 months. There's no how. It will come up in 3 months. So I think they need to look into all of these unnecessary items inside the budget. Nigerians are complaining already. We thought that, I mean, with a new government, things are going to change, but we see the same thing over and over and over again.
All right, thank you very much. So to Nigerians, what's your final take?
Well, to Nigerians, I want to say that when we're talking about inflation does not work without low productivity. I want to encourage Nigerians that we should not give up. This is our country. We don't have any other country to call ours. We have to keep trying. When price of commodities are rising, it's simply because that the production of those commodities are few. So what happened is that low productivity with plenty money. That's why when people want to define inflation, they say too much money pursuing too few goods. So we need to find a way to get our productivity up, especially agricultural items. If we produce, let's say 20, 30%, 40% more of what we produce this year by 2024, the prices of commodities will drop. So we also have a role to play as citizens, while the government also have their own role to play. I want to encourage Nigerians that we should keep doing our best to help this country.
Honestly. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Edward Okoje. He has said that the government needs to look into the budget to cut down on unnecessary spending, honestly, so that the budget will not be too high and everything will be, made available to Nigerians. And of course, Nigerians are advised that we should not give up. We should keep doing our best. We should not rely on the government. Of course, we do our own part, and the government will also have their own part to do. On this note, I want to thank the CEO of Oak Forest Company, Mr. Edward Okoje. Is also a multifaceted professional in farming, economist, and also a fitness coach and a financial market analyst. I want to say a very big thank you for coming on Oweleketv Business Time.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very grateful.
It's good to have you.
Thank you.
And I hope you invite me for that fitness coach so that
Sure,
I can watch on my weight too.
Thank you, I will.
All right, thank you very much. That's all we have for you today on Oweleketv Business Time. Don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms at Oweleketv, and our website is oweleketv.tv. I am Chiwendu Osisiago. Do have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching.